Hello and welcome to the Comedian's Paradise. This is the podcast where we speak to fascinating, gorgeous, scintillating, and powerful comedians from across the globe. Now, today's guest, he's the name of Tom. He has the name of Little. Tom Little, one of the best comedians on the UK comedy circuit. He's a man who built an online following and a man whose Edinburgh show that I watched and was blown away by. He is a comedian you're going to absolutely love. Please welcome the transcendent, the amazing Tom Little.
Far too kind, Marv. That was very flattering, but I can't possibly live up to
that. Sorry, man.
Yeah.
Have you ever had an intro from a promoter that's made you go, "Oh fuck, there's no way I can live up to that"?
Occasionally. Well, it's because I won a competition, like a stand-up competition years ago. Occasionally I'll get introduced as the award-winning comedian, but that only really happens at like the smallest, quietest open mic gigs as well. So it's and then it's like this guy is so amazing. You think, well, if I'm so amazing, why am I here? and that's what the audience are thinking as well. When they bring on it's an amazing award-winning comedian, and the audience is like, yeah, right. But that's sort of nice also.
But it's a mad thing though, in terms, even if you're like Stuart Lee or Paul Chowdhury, I saw them perform at Just the Jesters. So that like
that's true. Yeah.
Paul Chowdhury even said, for all these comics that are looking up now, even if you do get famous, you're gonna perform in shit. You have to perform in shitholes. But that isn't the thing with comedy. Even if you are famous, you still have to perform in gigs that you wouldn't. No, not always have to, but you still see them perform in places that they wouldn't like to perform.
Yeah, it's surprising. And I suppose part of that is it's for them wanting to test material in places where they don't have the same status. If you're like a touring comedian and you're performing to people who know they like you and will pay a lot of money to see you, then that's not going to be the same. Then they're already on your side. You're not having to win them over in the same way that people who don't like you. Like if you go to a gig where it's people who aren't fans of yours, then that's different. It's harder to win them over. So if you want to try out a new bit and you want to know that it's good, not just that people who like you will laugh anyway, then that's where you find out. Have you seen that documentary on Jerry Seinfeld?
The only documentary I saw was the one.
So there is a documentary about Jerry Seinfeld where he's doing like an unannounced spot. He's not announced on the bill. He just turns up at a gig, and there's still like drunk people in the audience talking over him in the gig, and you think, this is Jerry Seinfeld. This is like the biggest comedian in the world, more or less, and he's still getting this, like he's still getting a difficult audiences who don't like him, who aren't impressed that he's Jerry Seinfeld. You'd expect people to go, wow, we get to see Jerry Seinfeld for $5 or whatever, and they're still not bothered. But that'll be why he does gigs like that, because it's harder than doing his own tour show in a way, I would imagine.
It's a funny thing though. I mean, I know that Russell, what's that guy's name? Russell Kane likes to do that a lot.
Yeah.
But I've not seen. I hear about them popping down to gigs that I know of here and there, but I don't hear it often. But what must it be like for comedians that are at that level? Is it easier or harder? I mean, they do have people's approval, and they do have the money to get more people to work with them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when they struggle, is the humiliation a lot worse than perhaps me or you?
Yeah, it must be tough to actually do badly at your at a tour show. To when people pay like 20 quid a ticket to see you for an hour, to die on your ass there is bad. Yeah. yeah, I don't know what that would be like.
Not yet, not yet.
Yeah, not yet, not yet.
You do have a big talk. You do have a big social media following, so you are
Well,
near there, aren't you?
yeah, not quite, but you never know.
It's,
Hmm.
what do you make of comics that are like Jerry Sadowitz? I've watched him.
Mm.
I didn't like it, but my God, was it an experience? You know, you're
Yeah.
not going to forget him. I saw
Mm.
two guys fighting whilst he was on, and you know, I can say that it's like one of those things. I went to see him, but he's
Yeah.
not something that I'd see again and again.
Mm.
And is it going to affect his quality if he just performs to his own audience like he does? Because he won't be booked in so many places.
Yeah, I suppose, and like Jerry Sadowitz, I think he's sort of has a clear idea of what he's doing. That um, that it's sort of is only for his touring audience anyway. Like, I don't think he would want to do normal gigs. You know, I don't think he's interested in that. I think however, at some point, got to the point where he was just doing his tour, I presume.
Have you seen him perform live?
Yeah, yeah. So it was years ago now, but yeah, I saw him once in Glasgow, I think, and once at the Edinburgh Fringe.
What did you make of him?
Well, I can see why it's not for everyone. I thought he was very good at what he was doing. Yeah, I haven't seen him recently. He's more I think at the Fringe, was it last year, or the year before, when the plans cancelled his venue. I can't comment on that. When I saw him, he didn't do anything that was too far, in my opinion. It all seemed good, clean fun to me.
I think me and you, I think it's because the comedy seems to be completely divided. I think for our safety, we we will not say anything on the matter.
No, no.
It's funny how comedy's getting more and more divided, isn't there? I mean, I spoke to Alexis Dubas, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, but
Yeah.
he told me that with Comedy Unleashed, they booked Alistair Beckett King and they recorded a set and he roasted and took the piss out of them.
Yeah.
But they decided not to record it despite them being a freedom of speech platform. But I thought, I thought that's interesting to hear.
Yeah, yeah. There's another comedian, I can't think what his name is. Will Franken. Will Franken. I think he also, when he was on the bill, made fun of the night, and they weren't happy about it. So I think, I mean, I've not been to the Comedy Unleashed myself. Obviously, my idea of it maybe isn't fair, but the impression I get is that the big deal about free speech is really just a sort of a code or a euphemism for this is pro-Brexit or whatever, you know, like this is a bit more right-leaning conservative politics than you would expect at another gig, and that isn't really a free speech thing at all. It's not. That isn't more free or less free than another gig. It's just a different audience going with a different expectation. But if you're at a normal gig and you did a joke about Tories, how Tories are evil, you'd expect that to do all right. If you did a joke about how Tories are evil at Comedy Unleashed, it probably wouldn't go as well. So you'd expect to do a joke about, if you want to do a joke about Labour being evil, that would do better at Comedy Unleashed than at a different gig. So that's less about free speech, being able to say what you want, and just about leaning into a sort of political angle a bit more. That's what it feels to me. That's the impression I get. So if you're I don't think, even the actors who were booked on Comedy Unleashed, I don't think they're actually doing anything differently what they would normally do at gigs anyway. It's just that the audience slightly different so you can get a better reaction if you're leaning into that sort of politics, which is, that's the impression I get.
It's sort of disillusioned. So it's a bit like, I'm going to be very detailed and so be careful about what I say here,
Yeah.
but it's a bit like with Andrew Tate. He's what he's done is he's taken advantage. He's noticed that there's a market of disillusioned young men, and so he says everything that they feel or certain young men feel, and is completely taken advantage of them. And is that certain sort of thing that's maybe going with communist? They finding people they found a market that are feeling disillusioned with things, and they're taking advantage of that.
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, you hear so much about wokeness in not just comedy, but in like all the time in the news, and it's like there was a news article the other day. It was like the government were going to stop woke science lessons, and what does that even mean? But it seems like such a sort of ideological thing that there's wokeness that which is ruining everything, and it's wrong and bad, and that if you set yourself up as anti-woke, then that's going to appeal to certain kind of people who, for whatever reason, go along with the narrative of woke versus anti-woke sort of thing. So I think a lot of people, if you look at any old comedy on YouTube, like anything at all, like Dad's Army or Tommy Cooper or whatever, you'll always find comments saying this is when comedy was good, all this woke nonsense that you're not allowed to joke about, even when it's something completely innocuous, like Tommy Cooper just doing a magic trick. You could still do that now. There's nothing. But the idea that the wokeness has ruined everything is so pervasive that if you set yourself up as we're not like that, we're anti-woke, then that's going to attract people. They're going to think, oh, finally, this is the thing for me. And then they'll go to the gig, and it'll be the same kind of comedy you get at any other gig anywhere. But they just had it in their head that those other gigs are all woke. They aren't funny there,
Yeah.
But
one thing that you perhaps share with this is the only thing you probably share with Comedy Unleashed is because they've got a big platform and you have a big platform as well. Does it heighten your senses because you got to be cautious about what you say? Like people with more attention, and if you people twist what.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the profile of Comedy Unleashed or anything, but I mean, something I think, that's the thing with Comedy Unleashed, and that all that sort of more free speech angle in comedy is say about you shouldn't like self-censor, or if you just think comedians shouldn't be scared of causing offense. But I kind of think if you're a comedian, you wanting to make as many people laugh as possible. And if you have a joke where you think a lot of the room aren't going to like that, then it's just sensible to not do it rather than, and do a joke people would like instead. If you're a comedian, I think being funny is more important than saying something just to prove you're prepared to say it. It doesn't really. So for me, if I have a joke, if I think of something to tweet that I think is kind of funny, and I think, I can see why people wouldn't like that though, it just becomes it's not a. I might not tweet it because I just think it's not worth the hassle, and I don't think that means it's like a cowardly thing on my part. It just seems to be. It doesn't fit my brand, I'd rather. It's not worth. The people who would like that joke aren't worth the people who wouldn't like it, But that, but I think that's just a perfectly reasonable attitude. I don't think that's the big cowardly thing.
Yeah. So effectively, if I think that I'm going to be at a gig that they're or not for me, I'll probably avoid it. I don't think whatever the case is, you're going to please anyone. I mean, I learned that through Edinburgh. That's the biggest thing. If anything, when I've had certain people really enjoy it and then others walk out completely, that's the biggest lesson I got from that.
Yeah. But I mean, it's like if you look at the audience at a gig and you think, if you've got like a really dark joke that you like and you know sometimes works well, you also get a sense other people won't go for it. And you get to a gig and you think, oh, they're not going to like my dark joke here. I think it makes sense to just think, well, I won't do the dark joke tonight. I don't understand the virtue of thinking I'm going to do it anyway and do badly as a result. I don't see the point of that. I think it just do the stuff you think people will like, because that's what you've come to the gig for, and what they've come to the gig for. It doesn't make any sense. It's like you wouldn't if you had a joke that would make your friends laugh, but wouldn't make your grandmother laugh. You know what I mean? So you wouldn't tell the same joke to your grandmother that you might tell your mates, because what would be the point of telling your grandmother?
Yeah. I mean, at the end, we're both here to have a good time.
Yeah.
Now, is it similar to your approach to social media? Do you see it as that as well? Like, you put stuff that you find funny, and it's a bit like, in some respects, in terms of developing an act or a joke, that's similar. Like, you test stuff out and you develop things.
Yeah, I mean, with social media, Twitter, often what I'll do well on social media isn't what I'll do well in stand-up, and vice versa, for whatever reason. But certainly jokes I've had that was just like a little funny idea that I thought was worth tweeting. And then because people have liked it, that's made me think, oh, that was a funny idea. And then I've remembered it. And then that's become a stand-up routine later on, because that early enthusiasm on social media made me think about it more. So I've definitely got jokes that I probably wouldn't have written in my stand-up set had it not been for something doing well on Twitter. Yeah.
What did I want to say about it? Yeah, it's what have you found about the different platforms? Because I hear many things like Twitter. I've been looking at it, and I see Twitter as a sort of a site where you air your opinions. And Instagram's more like an experience platform, like you show what's behind the scenes, or you show little pictures as you go on this journey. And TikTok's just a silly app where you put funny videos up.
Yeah.
And I've heard from other comics that Instagram tends to be TikTok in terms of return is terrible, but I heard that Instagram is is a very effective platform for converting.
I think it's changing all the time. I think a while ago, Twitter was a lot better than it is now. Elon Musk bought Twitter and made a lot of changes, and he ruined everything. And it's not just me saying that; it's everyone. So, like in lockdown 2020, I spent a lot of time making videos mainly for Twitter. I was building an audience there. But in the last year or so, it feels like the audience I built are people who don't even look at Twitter anymore. Yeah, and the algorithm's changing. Stuff doesn't get shown to followers anymore, so Twitter feels a lot less useful than it did. With TikTok, I think you can get a lot more views on an individual video, but that doesn't mean that people will regularly see you again. So in lockdown, I got to like 90,000 followers on TikTok, and I'd put videos on, and they'd get like hundreds of thousands of views every day or every other day for a while. And it wasn't even good videos either. I would just film myself saying something to the camera, and I'd make like 5 videos a day, and one of them would do really well regularly. But then after a while, I went to Edinburgh. I did the Fringe, and when I was at the Fringe, I didn't have time to do TikTok videos every day. So once I stopped putting videos online every day, I realized I just videos will get nothing or next to nothing. So I'd have like 90,000 followers, and I'd put a video on and get like 300 views or something. So yeah, a drop like that. So the thing with TikTok is it massively it makes you think you have a bigger following than you have, really. Because just because people follow you doesn't mean that they're actually seeing your stuff. It just means they saw a video of you once and they liked it, you know. So it's I hear about people doing really well with TikTok, but it seems to me it's not what it's cracked up to be. As far as I can work out, Instagram seems better than that. With that, if you put like reels on, that you can build more of a following on Instagram. But I personally, what I liked about Twitter is I think with Twitter, people would comment on the news, and it was like sort of an online conversation. Stuff was always happening, and you were always joking about that. Whereas on Instagram, I just feel like every Instagram post is just a photo of someone I know doing a gig, and I just look at it and think, well, I don't care. This isn't. I find it not that interesting, Instagram. So I don't. I think the best way to be famous on Instagram is to be a very beautiful woman. Because it's picture oriented. So if you're very beautiful, then you're going to get followers because people want to look at you being very beautiful. Or a beautiful man, I should say. To be a beautiful person is the way, but that's not to do with being funny. So if you're me, it seems to me, what's the point of me putting a picture of myself? Just this is what t-shirt I'm wearing today. This is today's hoodie. I don't. Here's my face again. I don't. I don't. I've never found Instagram useful for building an audience, and I always thought it was obvious that it wasn't useful for building an audience. So now that they've changed the with reels that you can put stand-up clips on, and it seems people are doing better there, or a lot better there. It seems some people. But again, I don't understand the algorithm there. Why some stuff does well, why others don't. I found when I was putting up videos on Instagram, nothing happened. They'd do it. They'd get like a few thousand views, but I wasn't getting followers from it. It didn't seem like it was just a hassle to do for me. I didn't. Maybe other people are having a better time with it, but I don't know. So at the moment, I do think Instagram still seems like the best way to build a following at the moment on social media. I think that it changes all the time. But so if people want to focus on something, Instagram's what I'd focus on. I still think I'm that unreliable. The time I spent on Twitter. I suppose for me, you can put so much time in building a following on a social media platform, but then the social media platform can change, and it can be all fall apart. Possible.
You mentioned some very interesting points, because I remember watched the video. This video probably not do well on TikTok now, but I'll say it anyway.
Yeah.
There's a guy called Patrick Bet-David, and he wrote a video where he was criticizing TikTok. And he put that on TikTok. Ever since he's done that, the views of his stuff has completely gone down. Whilst on platforms like YouTube and Instagram, and it's just gone massively high. And one thing I want to add to what you're saying, I've noticed with myself personally, with YouTube seems to be, for myself, I found that to be a more effective platform than all of them. Like in terms of, I found that to be the most effective.
Go on. Sorry.
Because I've had a couple of people from my Zoa character and my podcast who have actually got in touch with me, and I've had a conversation with them.
Yeah.
So, and you mentioned also with podcasts being, I think when we had a chat, you said the podcast seemed to be most effective. And I think that's like with what Have a Word have done, like 10,000 people following them, paying £3. Is it because of the investment of a podcast that makes it such a good platform for building a following?
I think it's not the follower count that's important. I think if people are listening to a podcast regularly, then that means that they're more interested in what you do than if they just happen to follow you on Twitter and did a funny tweet once. So podcast listeners are probably the most loyal, realist fans. That they're actually engaging with that amount of content regularly. So if you have a successful podcast, and that's going to be a bigger, more real fan base that you can actually turn into touring, have a word done. But it's so much harder as well to actually have a successful podcast. And the amount of work you know yourself, Marvin, as you do, the amount of work you do to build it. That's a lot bigger than just putting than just doing tweets, videos on Instagram or whatever. But YouTube as well. I think if people are watching like longer videos of you, then that obviously means that they're more invested in what you're doing than if they're just watching 30-second clips of you that they got shown randomly on TikTok. If they're actually subscribing to a YouTube channel and thinking, I want to see more of this, then that's again a loyal audience.
You've got to be the toxic relationship that they struggle to get out of. They've invested too much into it. They've invested much energy, emotions into the relationship with you. So it's so hard for them to get out.
Completely.
But in a good way, guys. In a good way. But in terms of the principles of with a podcast, because they have to, the more someone's invested in something, the harder it is for them to leave.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, is that what you feel? That's how I feel about Edinburgh, because of all the money. Once you've invested £2,000, you can't get out now.
Yeah. What to do? What you've got to do is something.
But there's a lot of festivals sort of piggybacking on that sort of thing. I mean, the Brighton Fringe I found a bit mad in a way. There's all sorts of festivals now, and there's all sorts. Comedy is an interesting place, and I'm intrigued to see what happens in about 5 years or so. Like for now, a lot of people building social media followings, building tours, but I'm interested to see what happens if for some that are not ready for it, doing it, and then those that like Jeff Vincent or yourself that are ready. I want to see what's going to happen after that. What's going to be the thing after that? Yeah,
it feels like things have to go in and out of fashion. And it feels like there can't be the demand for something forever. Like it should be a lot of crowd work videos quite recently. And you can see why they were popular. The way comedians just putting videos themselves doing crowd work, because it was crowd work. Like they weren't using up material. So there were a lot of them. But it felt like audiences are going to get bored of this eventually. It isn't like the new way to be a comedian now. Just put crowd work videos on forever. There's going to be a limited amount of time, but that builds an audience, and then people are going to get sick of it, and then it'll be the new thing. So I think a mistake is to look at someone who's successfully built an audience and think, well, that's how you do it. I'm going to copy what they did. I think often the people who build an audience are like the first, or among the first people to do it. And by the time they've done it successfully, that means it's too late. That it's time to find the next thing. So I think I don't know what the next thing is. If I find out, I'll do it myself and won't tell anyone.
That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. But we'll see.
Would you? Yeah, it's. We'll share it together. If I give you a split of the cost,
yeah, and you tell me as well if you.
No. Now, we both saw each other at the Fringe. Yep. Is the thought of it? I know that Alex Petty put the Fringe is back. Do you believe that sentiment, or is there a bit of skepticism? Because I'm a bit on the fence with it.
I suppose it depends what you mean by back. You know, I think there were certainly plenty of people at the Fringe last year, plenty of audience. Well, enough. There was enough audience for there to be a Fringe, but there's never enough audience for all the shows that are there. That's what I mean. So the Fringe is a thing that exists and makes money for certain people, not comedians, but makes money for someone. Then it's back. I don't think the Fringe is or ever will be what it used to be in terms of industry recognition. I think it's getting less and less useful every year. I think, but acts are still going up as if it's the 90s. You know, I think in the 90s, if you did the Fringe and you won the main award, you had your own sitcom on BBC Two 2 years later. You know, whereas now, well, first of all, even if you win the main award, that doesn't happen. But also that a lot of TV work is booked by. It's pretty obvious to me. Isn't booked based on how acts do in Edinburgh. It's to do with online profiles or gigging in London. You know, if you my advice to comedians, if you want to be famous, you want to be on telly, isn't doing Edinburgh isn't as important as living in London. That's what I would say. Because when I email people, industry people asking to see me in Edinburgh, they say, "Sorry, we're really busy in Edinburgh, but let us know when you're gigging in London." You know, so that's so I, you know, but also genuinely, if you look at acts in Edinburgh, you'll see on flyers it'll be acts who were. It used to be you did Edinburgh and then you got on telly. Now you'll see acts. It'll say as seen on Comedy Central, Dave, whatever, making their debut this year. So they obviously got the TV recognition before they'd even done their debut hour in Edinburgh. So they must have got that from, I'm guessing, London or online. But that begs the question: if they've got the TV profile before they've done their debut hour in Edinburgh, then why do they need to do a debut hour in Edinburgh at all? What's the and not just do a debut hour, but do it at a big four venue and spend all the money on PR? What for? Who are you trying to impress now when you've already been on Comedy Central? You know, what's going on? It's all gone a bit backwards, I think, or upside down. But I did hear that live at the Apollo, I heard a rumor that the producers of Live at the Apollo weren't even at the Fringe. You know, they booked acts based on, you know, acts they already knew or had seen other gigs in London. You know, but I think acts will still go to Edinburgh in the belief that Live at the Apollo producers might be coming, and they aren't. So, you know, but that's anyway, that's all good though, because you know, Edinburgh is too expensive, and that limits where the acts that can go. Which, you know, so you do get you know, disproportionately middle class white people. Which is right for me, but you know, well, I'm not middle class, but you know, disproportionately middle class white people at Edinburgh performing to an audience of disproportionate middle class white people. So, in terms of, you know, finding comedians that are more representative of the country as a whole, Edinburgh isn't the place to look. It makes more sense to look online or looking at London circuit. So, but acts still carry on spending the money to do Edinburgh, and Edinburgh venues and PR and that carry on taking the money because of this sort of fiction that it's still the 90s and that this is how you get famous. I don't think it is, really. And I say that's someone who does Edinburgh, you know. But I do Edinburgh myself on the free fringe. I do it as cheaply as possible, just to do the free fringe, so I can do the show myself, and do the show for its own sake. I don't go to Edinburgh with the expectation of getting famous from it, because I don't think I will. Or if I wanted to be famous, I'd move to London and I'd get a day job to afford to live in London. You know, whereas instead I can, yeah.
What you said there is, maybe this is a terrible analogy that I'm going to get into trouble with, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Yeah.
What you described it as is like desperation in terms of when you're trying to attract someone that you're attracted to. If you're desperate, it doesn't bring them to you. It makes them run away from you. And that's what you described in terms of us all the way going up to Edinburgh and hoping it's like constantly kissing. I think I saw a post say that you're not really a big fan of him, but did he make one good point in terms of saying that stop going to the fringe because it's making you desperate? But the thing about the fringe, it does make it. You get a lot of performance opportunities. You get to learn from a great performance.
Oh yeah,
That's what I like about it.
Yeah,
and you get to hone your muscles.
Yeah,
and meet lots of great people.
Yeah,
But is his saying on like stop doing the Edinburgh Fringe to try and get famous because you're trying to go for the smaller pool, and there's so many people coming, and then when someone knows, it's like with life coaches or something, they think, oh, these people think, oh, Tony Robbins is going to sort my life out whilst I pay £10,000 and I'm massive in debt.
Yeah,
no, that's not going to happen. You got to sort it out yourself. So it's effectively what you said there. You've given the correct answer to all of this going on. If you want to, you got to carve your own way and be creative.
Yeah,
think outside the box.
Well, I think there are two ways to do Edinburgh. Really, there's doing it as cheaply as possible for its own sake. As it said, to do a show, get experience, get better as a comedian, just have fun, whatever. There's that, which is what I do. Or there's to do the fringe with the intention of career progression, which means doing it as expensively as possible, spending a lot of money, do it in the best venue, and publicise it and have posters of your face all over Edinburgh, spending like 10 grand. And that's what a lot of acts are still doing. And I think that, that's never been less sensible. Every year that seems a stupider thing to do, in my opinion. Although some of the acts who do that will become successful and will become famous and will be able to say, well, it worked for me. But I would point out that someone wins the lottery every week. That doesn't mean that it's an idea to
that's true.
Spend the money on the lottery. So if doing the Edinburgh Fringe that I do of doing it as cheap as possible, I still think it's worthwhile and I still do it. That's why I'm doing it. But I don't think I think a lot of acts probably do the fringe with the intention secretly. No one admits this, but in the secret hope of getting successful, getting famous, I should say, famous in some way from it, and then go home feeling disappointed and thousands of pounds worse off. That's how the fringe is getting worse, because I think that's happening more and more, and that makes me feel cynical when I'm there, because even though I'm doing all right and I'm happy with how my shows are going, I'll be walking past people in the street and like, hey man, how's it going? And they're like, yeah, I'm fine, trying to hide the tears, so that makes me feel cynical about the fringe, that even though you can do well there, the fringe is still a sort of it's primarily run to make money. It's not primarily run, but it's definitely run to exploit the naivety of comedians, I think, and make money from comedians. There's a lot of that sort of a parasitic side of it.
Yeah.
Even though I can enjoy the fringe and enjoy, and I'm grateful that people come to see me, and I hope people continue to do, I'm aware of the parasitic side of it.
Well, you because you've been doing it for so long, you're able to make more of it, aren't you? Then perhaps new people coming in, you're prepared for a lot of it, so you know the way round a lot of to make it useful for yourself.
Yeah. But if people want my advice is to do a show on the free fringe or the free festival in a central location, and that's it. And you fly because people are walking past, looking to see comedy. If you say my show's free and it's starting in 15 minutes and it's just over there, that's the best way to get an audience. If you're saying my show is £12 But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you follow up with. If it's 12 quid, they're not going to go see you. They're going to see me instead because my show's free. That's my advice on how to get an audience in Edinburgh. It's not my advice on how to impress an industry, because if you want to impress the industry, you got to do it at the expense. Which is what I say, that the 10 you got to pay the 10 grand. I don't know why the industry works like that. The industry want you to have paid the 10 grand.
I mean, whoever's there, I just got an image of some greedy, like big, ginormous person sat on his couch saying, "Oh, look at these suckers! Oh, look at all the money! Oh,
yeah.
Right, sweet. Right, I'm gonna get some pina coladas for all of you. This prick's giving me 50,000 quid. Oh, this other one's giving me that." But it's having said all of those things, it's a lot of fun, and you meet a lot of great people. Despite all of the crap, it is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Though I did ignore a few people. Did you ignore a few people? No, I shouldn't say this, but there were a couple of people that I'm a bit like, nah, man, I'm running away from you.
No, I get on with everyone. I think
that's a smart thing to say.
Yeah.
Now, but I mean, London. It is a shame with what's going on at the moment, because I think when I first started, things seemed to be a bit more open. But London, with the amount of bringer gigs, because so many people want to be famous, is becoming a lot like New York and LA, because they know people are desperate. So they know that they don't have to give a fair deal. And that's, I mean, in the North, I've heard this. I mean, you've gigged in the North, you've gigged in the Midlands, and you gigged in London. I hear from a lot of comedians that are gigging up North in the Midlands that comedy is happening in the Midlands and the North, like, because you get paid better. And because of Have a Word, you got hot water coming, you got a lot of things happening.
Basically, the difference between London and outside of London is outside of London, there's less competition. There are fewer comedians, which means there are fewer gigs, and there's just less competition, which means things get better. If there's 10 gigs on the same street competing for the same audience, that means they're all going to be crap gigs. Because there's just aren't that many audience to go around, and that's how they all become bringer gigs, because there's no other way to get people in. If there's one gig in the whole town, then that's got a better chance of getting an audience. So that's why there aren't bringer gigs outside of London, because people will come and see comedy. In London, there's that much more to do, not just other comedy gigs, but We Will Rock You, whatever. There's all the famous comedians are doing the tour shows there all the time. So why would you go and see a mixed bill of people you haven't heard of? But if you're in like a village in Yorkshire, there isn't that competition. So a mixed bill without famous people still has a better chance of attracting an audience. So outside of London is better in that way. But the flip side of that is there are fewer gigs to do, which means you aren't gigging as often. You live outside London. If you're living in London, you can realistically gig, every night of the week if you want to, or 4 or 5 times. It seems pretty normal. But in London, you might be gigging. Certainly, when you're new, you might be gigging like a few times a month. So it's a quality versus quantity trade-off again. I've lived in the North and the Midlands and London. I've gigged in all three, and I definitely think the time I lived in London was good for me, and I got better while I was down. I gigged a lot more. I felt I got better while I was down, but I was happy to leave. After a while, I prefer being outside London, because it's bigger audiences and more money, and rent is cheaper.
And is there more of a chance to be a full-time comic outside of London, like just earning your full-time living from it?
I think so. I think just because genuinely, because rent is less, but gigs pay more, so it's achievable to earn your rent, pay your rent from gigging. In London, I don't really see how it is on like a mixed bill circuit, because even if you're doing like the better gigs on Friday and Saturday, they're still only going to pay like 100 quid, and there's only what, 4 weekends a month, most months. So if you get 100 quid on the Friday and the Saturday, that's still only like 800 quid a week. And rent in London's going to cost rent in a shithole in London it costs about that same. And then you've still got to eat, and you've still got to pay for your food, and so I don't see how you can pay your rent from gigging in London. I think anyone who's a full-time comedian in London, if you're on telly, if you're getting telly work or something, or you're doing your tour shows, well, then you make money. But no one at my level can be full-time in London. You would have to have another source of income, or just rich parents.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's funny, isn't it, when you see people like Jeff Innocent doing comedy courses to make money from it, or you see people that are really at the top of the circuit in London having to do comedy courses to cover a lot of things. Well, I don't know if the full situation, but it is funny seeing people with such a high level.
I imagine Jeff Innocent does comedy courses because he likes teaching as well. I get that impression. Jeff Innocent seems keen to have some wisdom, I think.
Yeah. I don't think I would. There are a few comedy courses that are going around that are taught by comics that are. This is me. I'm throwing shade here, which I shouldn't be doing. But my opinion on teaching comedy is, unless you're pro comic, I don't think you should be teaching, because you've got to be that's maybe it's a narrow-minded point of view. But if I'm not a pro comic myself, so if I feel that. There's a lot of things that I wouldn't know that and I'll be. I feel that there's things that I wouldn't know, and I would be sort of selling them a con, like saying they're going to be this or that.
Yeah,
if I've not reached it myself.
Yeah, I don't really know what gets taught in comedy courses because I've never been on one. But I do think that, to be fair, being able to teach something is different from being able to do it. If you were learning a musical instrument, you wouldn't insist the person also performed instrument and made a living. You don't need someone who isn't Jimi Hendrix can still teach you guitar. And you can have a guitar teacher who doesn't perform at all. In stand-up, it's a bit harder to see how you could know about comedy without being reading yourself. So I don't know, but at the same time, you could make the argument that if you've seen enough comedy and you've maybe worked, maybe or something, that you've seen a lot, you've seen that much comedy and you've thought about it enough that you have some kind of insight that could still be useful. That's just my being diplomatic. Anyone?
Yes, that is.
If you do your comedy course, maybe people do know what they're talking about. I don't know. But in terms of if you're wanting to go on a comedy course, how you decide how you believe someone knows what they're talking about, and think, yeah, I'll pay money for their opinion. I don't know.
It is a bit. One of the things I've seen on it in regards to comedy courses is, I know that, but if you teach enough people in comedy for like maybe 10 or 20 years, you teach the basics, you're going to find someone who's famous. Over 10 or 20 years, and you're teaching thousands and thousands of people about comedy, someone famous is going to walk through.
Yeah. And that's sort of true with them comedy competitions as well, that they always boast that one of their previous winners went on to become massively famous. And you think, they were going to anyway, though. They didn't become famous because they won your competition. They won your competition because they were already a really good actor. It's not it's certainly just because someone did a comedy course, that doesn't mean the comedy course is good.
But if you're doing it, it's you're going to think that anyway. But you're going to think that
Yeah,
it's subconsciously. If you see, oh, Peter Kay or someone like that has done like, so you think you're funny. That's the
yeah,
biggest comedy competition in on par with the BBC New Comedian.
yeah,
Because of the great people, you've got this idea of it being amazing because of the people that have
yeah.
done it.
Mm.
But
But at the same time, if an act does lend a quote to a comedy course, and so this person taught me how to do comedy, I recommend this. Then that's fair enough.
now, for through all of this conversation and everything that's happened, if you were going to speak to Tom Little when he was, I don't know, a young pup, about 20 years old, doing comedy for the first time, shaking the microphone, not knowing what to
Yeah.
do, what would you say to your younger self that's a comedian that's starting out now that isn't obvious, like writing a lot, gigging a lot, find your own voice?
Oh.
What's something that would navigate some of the mistakes that you've made and to avoid them?
Mm. Uh, I can think of I can think of some stuff that's very specific to me. That, maybe would be of no use to anyone else. But like certainly, I can remember having like realizations about things that were right with my own act. That once I figured them out, I was like, oh, that helps, and everything. If I'd realized that sooner, I got better quicker. So, for example, when I first started stand up, I would just go straight into talking about whatever it was I wanted to joke about, like vampires or dogs or whatever, And I realized after a while that was odd for an audience. If you start saying, so here's what I think about vampires. Audiences find that odd. If you're starting a stand-up set, I think you need what I decided was you need to start it the same way you'd start a conversation in real life. Even though in theory you can talk about whatever you want, in practice it's sort of like an unspoken rule that you'd do a gig the way you'd start a normal conversation. And the way you start a normal conversation is there are only certain things that you can really open a set with, in my opinion. So a lot of comedians will open the set with a joke where they're at, where the gig is, or something about them that marks them out as different from the audience based on what they look like or where they're from, or thing like that. So that's one thing I realized was to start strongly. I think I needed to write jokes based on what the gig was or where I'm from, or that kind of thing. So I started deliberately writing joke material about Cumbria, which is where I'm from, just because I found that was like a natural way of starting a set rather than just launching into something odd. And once I do that, that was a way. Then once you win an audience over like that, then you can talk about whatever you want. So that was just something I realized eventually. And I think if I'd realized that, if I'd known that from the start, then that might have helped. But again, that's something maybe quite specific to me. I don't know.
No, that sounds brilliant. I love it. It's yeah, that's a very practical and straight to the point thing. And it sounds so obvious, but when you say it, it's like, oh yeah, why didn't I think of that? Like it's just
Yeah. Something else that's again specific to me is I'm aware, however I feel on stage, it's always remarked on how nervous I look. Always has been. And initially when I started comedy, I was sort of the joke that I was that nervous, and I'd write material around that. For a while, then I felt I was holding me back a bit. That I always seemed new. Even when I was doing well, I always seemed new, and I didn't want to seem new. So I tried to be. I stopped writing material about being nervous. Tried to stop looking nervous, and then realized that no, I still look nervous. People were still commenting on it, So eventually I just felt, well, I'm just going to have to lean into this. So now I start my set by saying, I know I look nervous, but I'm fine.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, that'll be like literally the first thing I say. Now, and for some reason, for years, I'd refer to like looking nervous like a few minutes in. I don't know why. It's occurred to me ridiculously recently that it should be the very first thing I say. And now that I find it's the first thing I say, it works because it's like telling it, because the audience were thinking it before I said it. So if you refer to it straight away, then like, oh, right, you know, we know, you've made a joke of it. So then it becomes like a deliberate thing that they're thinking, oh, he's not nervous because he's never done stand-up before. He's nervous because that's part of his persona or whatever. So I found the more I insist, the more I lean into my nervousness, the more comfortable an audience will feel with me, the more they'll relax. It seems. So again, an advice I could have given myself earlier was just say that straight away. Yeah.
And that's being aware. I think Jack Cowell said this in Britain's Got Talent a while ago. With a really good bit of advice, he said, "Your weaknesses are your strengths," and being aware of how your weaknesses come across, and then owning it, like what Tyrion Lannister said. You seen Game of Thrones?
No.
But he says this scene where the guy Jon Snow is a bastard, and he says, "Never forget what you are, bastard." Because his dad slept with another woman.
Yeah.
And it says, never forget what you are, because the rest of the world won't. So like owning whatever your weakness is, and this is me. Let's have fun about it rather than being tense or comfortable about it.
Yeah, it's true. And just being aware of how you come across to other people as well. Yeah.
How important is that when being a comic? Because one thing that I have seen on a lot of the top comics that I see, the best comics I've seen, is that a lot of their jokes work for them. A lot of what they do on stage work for them, and they wouldn't work for anyone else. But a lot of comics where they're not quite there, and they're good, they write good jokes, but they don't have a voice or an act. And I feel with ones that are in the middle, their stuff, if you give it to someone else, could be taken, that's their act gone. They'll look like me, and they'll say good jokes, and then this could be said by anyone.
Yeah, there's something in that. Anyway, it's a good bit of wisdom. I read a book on comedy recently. I can't remember who it's by, which said people laugh at performance. Audiences laugh at performance, not writing. So much in comedy we talk about writing, how important writing is, but really it's performance that's important. You can perform a bad bit of material so well that an audience will laugh at it. You deliver it with such confidence. If you perform a well-written joke badly, it'll work. It's the performance more than the writing. And I think so much of performance in stand-up is probably to do with how you are, what's different about you. And I think what you're right that material that only suits you is good. That another act couldn't do, because it's only funny when you do it. I think that's something in that. I don't know how you go about writing a thing that only you can do. But if you find that you've written a bit, then that's good.
What I'm going to leave on two questions. So one of the questions is, what is your favorite comedy bit by your favorite comic, and what do you find amazing about why that works for them? And also, how do they find out about you? Do they find out about you in the bush, in the post, I don't know, in Grindr, Tinder? What? They're the questions.
Okay, the first question, a bit that I really like and I don't know why I like this bit so much, but it's stuck in my mind. I remember seeing it as a kid, and it's just I've realised it must have been a formative influence on me. It was a Jack D routine. He's just talking about. He's talking about. I think he's talking about the European Union. This was years ago. It was talking about when they changed passports from blue passports to burgundy passports, which is it's pre-Brexit, so that was the. He's talking about how people get worked about like silly changes as if it matters, and he just talked about how stupid it was when they changed Jif to Sif. That the cleaning product Sif used to be called Jif. I'm telling this routine really badly, but the cleaning product Sif used to be called Jif. And he said that someone had said to him that he was glad they've changed Jif to Sif because there's two different products called Jif, and now that one's called Jif and one's called Sif, that's less confusing because there's a product to clean like baths called Jif, and there's a lemon juice called Jif, and Jack G tells that better than I do. But Jack G just how confused were you by those two products? You know, how exactly do you confuse a lemon shaped, lemon sized, lemon coloured, lemon smelling plastic lemon with a white bottle with a picture of a bath on it? And I don't know why, but Jack D just saying lemon shaped, lemon sized, lemon coloured plastic lemon. The exasperation of him saying plastic lemon. I don't know, it just cracked me up. And I've completely butchered that routine, but I for some reason it sticks in my head as the greatest bit of stand-up, even though I can't do it justice, just because it was such a trivial, stupid thing, and he was that worked up about it. And it was, it was just such a small, silly thing that other people could have thought of, but no one had. What? How could you confuse Jif lemon juice with Jif lemon toilet cleaner? They're so obviously there's different things, and it just seemed that Jack would get that worked up about it. That just stuck in my mind as a very funny bit, and I like it because it's just very silly and trivial. It's not speaking truth to power. It's not a particularly risky or offensive bit. It's just a very, very innocuous, silly bit about not that there's anything wrong with being risky or offensive. Or I just think when comedy is talked about, it's often talked about so much as this is great because it's very satirical or it's very clever or or it's dealing with a really dark, difficult subject, or it's very it's talked about mental health. It's very important. I just really like that was such a stupid, irrelevant bit. I would point out that's why none of that is important. None of that has to be the reason why comedy is good, because sometimes it's good because it's something utterly trivial about a plastic lemon. So that sticks in my mind as a great bit from Jack. That's a good bit in my opinion.
I'm gonna go watch that now.
You have to watch it. I've ruined it. I've told you the joke, and I've ruined it, and I've told it in the least funny way possible. But so if you watch it now, you won't even laugh when you see it. So, but yeah, it was just the frustration of the way he says plastic lemon. I don't know.
What I should have done, is I should have got I should have asked you to type in the video online on YouTube, the bit, and then we would have commented on it. But there's so many things that are missing out from it.
Never mind.
But it's all good.
Yeah.
But yeah, for anyone that's listening in right now, how do they find out about you?
You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, or Facebook. I'm at This Is Tom Little. That's at This Is Tom Little, not at Mrs. Tom Little. This one once been misheard. This Is Tom Little is how I am. And I've got my website is thisistomlittle.wordpress.com. On YouTube, I'm just youtube.com/Tom Little. Twitter's the thing I do mainly, but as I say, with that falling apart because of Elon Musk, I don't know how much longer that will be the case. But follow me on anything. If you're on anything at all, and This Is Tom Little, all of them.
And if you follow him, make sure you give him money as well.
That also is good. Yeah, just send me money whenever possible. Come see me in Edinburgh. I'll book it every day. Bring cash.
Right. So you know where to go, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I've enjoyed this episode. So I got Marcel Leconte coming up this week. Tom, the maestro, is going to come up in a couple of weeks from there. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I'll see you at the next episode.
Bye.